Welcome back to another edition of the podcast. And today we're going to be reviewing game week 38 in the National League, whilst also taking a look towards Tuesdays fixtures. Like all games weeks at this stage of the season, they're all very significant. I'm joined by Ryan tonight. Ryan, you'll be buzzing with this one, won't you? After, of course, Scunthorpe winning late on against Altrincham. That's probably the perfect way to start.
Yeah, absolutely. It was a really important 3 points. Obviously, results didn't go our way at 3 o'clock. We obviously kicked off at 5:30 under zone. So you're seeing the other results come through, and you're thinking, if we can't get the win today, we're going to be in, I wouldn't say in trouble, but it's going to start getting a little bit edgy as the season starts to draw to a close. So, yeah, it was a massive 3 points. Wasn't our greatest performance against Altrincham. I thought first half an hour we were actually okay, and the goal was a little bit against the run of play. But he's still disappointed to go in at half time 1-0 down. I thought the worst part of the game from our perspective was sort of the 20 minutes after half time, where actually Altrincham could have easily made it 2-0, maybe even 3-0. They had a couple of really good opportunities. So they'll be frustrated with that. But once we got the equaliser, we were back on the front foot and pressing, and eventually we got the goal. What impressed me most was the fact that when we actually scored the goal at the end, we didn't have Danny Whitehall on the field. We didn't have Leo Farrell on the field either. They'd both been substituted. And Callum Roberts didn't play at all on Saturday. So you could argue our three biggest goal threats were all off the field. So it was nice to find a different way to win a football match. That was the most important and the most impressive thing for me in the end. As I said, the others won as well, so the gap hasn't extended. But the key thing for us is just keeping the gap what it is. Obviously, the games are starting to run out. So the longer that the gap stays to sort of 8 and 9 points, the better that is for us, really. Yeah, massive 3 points. As I said, not the best performance, but at this stage in the season, more than ever, it's a results business. So that was the most important thing on Saturday, was the 3 points, of course.
Yeah, usually in the National League, based on previous years, you need about 70 points to confirm a playoff spot. At the moment, Scunthorpe are on 67, so they probably, you'd say, would usually in any other season need about one win. You may need maybe a second or third win as well this season, because I think it's projected to be a little bit higher because of how well teams have performed, particularly in that first half of the season. But what a winner it was, actually. Of course, Scunthorpe coming from 2-1 down. I wasn't overly impressed, if I'm being honest, with Scunthorpe on the actual day. Altrincham, like you've mentioned, probably could have gone 2-0 up, but just didn't take their opportunities. But, at this stage of the season, it's just finding ways to win. And what a way to find yourselves to win. What a strike that was from Alfie Beeston, who, of course, came off from the bench. And, probably, maybe for you guys, a goal of the season contender.
Yeah, potentially. I know Danny Whitehall will have something to say about that. He struck a couple of good free kicks earlier on in the season. Alfie Beeston's a really important player to us. He hasn't actually played as many minutes as he would have liked this season, and that's mostly down to the form of the other three that we've got in midfield in terms of Zane Westbrook, Joe Rowley, and Ollie Ewing. But when he does come on, he always makes an impact. He's a really good technical player. And in terms of a finisher, he's actually one of the best finishers at the football club. In front of goal, he is generally pretty good. Yeah, massive goal. He's been with the club for 6 seasons now. He's our longest serving player. So he's been here through the highs and the lows of the football club. So massive credit to Alfie Beeston. Like I say, I was just pleased with the way that we kept going, and we found a different way to win a football match. That there's been so many times this season where we've had to almost rely on Danny Whitehall and Callum Roberts to kind of dig us out of a hole. So it was nice that we found another way to do it. I think Altrincham will feel like they maybe deserved a point in the end. They'll be disappointed, but equally they'll be sort of happy with the way things have gone for them in the last 5 or 6 games. They're almost safe now, which is their primary aim. So yeah, they'll be happy on the whole, but they'll be disappointed, obviously, to lose the game so late on. But I thought all the substitutes on Saturday did make an impact. I know Ollie Ewing came off the bench. It's one of his best games for a little while as well. So yeah, it's good that the subs are making a positive impact, because earlier on in the season we didn't really see a lot of that. It was often once we made 2 or 3 subs, we looked a lot weaker. So it was nice that we had some options off the bench. So that was a positive as well. But yeah, overall, not the best performance. Still need to do better in certain areas, but the 3 points is all that matters most at this stage in the season, as it is for all the other teams that are chasing the playoffs as well, like Southend and Halifax and even Hartlepool, who've maybe got a glimmer of hope as well. So yeah, results is the most important thing at this stage, definitely.
I had a bit of a mix of emotions between the high and the low, I suppose, when that winner went in for Scunthorpe. Of course, it did mean I got all 3 points for that individual game. I predicted 2-1, but on the other hand, Halifax now, after an impressive result for them, of course, it keeps that gap, as you mentioned, and that could be a good place to go to next. Halifax 3, Boreham Wood 2. All I can say is what a match of football that was that both sides put on display. For me, out of all the games, potentially I'm a little bit biased, and I'm sure when we speak about another game shortly, they may have something to say about this. Probably the game of the game week, in my opinion. Of course, Halifax came out on top, winning 3-2. It, of course, went 1-0 Halifax. Bwood equalised. Halifax took a 2-1 lead. Bwood equalised again, and it felt like Bwood were probably going to go on to win the game, but of course that wasn't the case, and Halifax caught Bwood on the break within the last 5 minutes, becoming a bit of a side, Halifax, at the moment, where they're scoring a lot of late goals, not last minute winners as such, but late goals in the game, and a crucial win for them against a very good Bwood side. I wasn't disappointed with them at all, probably the best side I've seen at the Shea this season, but yeah, big 3 points for Halifax.
Yeah, absolutely. In terms of Boreham Wood, obviously I can only go off when Scunthorpe played them, and they were actually the best side to come to Glanford Park as well earlier on in the season. I would say it was between them and York. Maybe York edged it, to be fair, but Boreham Wood were really impressive when they come. As we both said, they're an expansive team. They play a good brand of football. We weren't far off, really. I think we both predicted 2-2, didn't we? We both said there'd be goals at both ends. It was exactly the kind of game that we predicted it to be, in terms of both teams creating a lot of chances end to end. There's good players on both sides. I said Abdul Malik would be a threat, and he was at it again. He was involved in both goals, but particularly the second Boreham Wood goal. Great bit of skill down the byline, a great ball across. And I also did say last week that I thought Boreham Wood were a little bit too vulnerable on the counter. And that was shown with Halifax's winning goal. Obviously, from Halifax's perspective, it's a great goal. It's a fantastic passing move. For Boreham Wood, I think they will look at that and say they're probably too open. You're in the 86th, 87th minute. You've got a draw, and then you're a bit too expansive, I would say, if I'm being a bit critical. But we all know that's the way that Boreham Wood play. They do play like that. They play on the edge. They put the ball at risk. So yeah, that's the risk to doing that, I suppose. For Halifax, you'll be better placed to talk about individual performances than I will. But what I can say is it's a massive result. I think when you look through Halifax's fixtures and who they had left, that was probably their toughest game on paper. I don't believe you've got Carlisle and York left to play, have you? I don't think so.
The only one, but to be honest,
Carlisle the only one.
Boreham Wood tougher than Carlisle, to be honest, at the moment.
Yeah, and you've played York twice as well now, haven't you? So so it's one of the toughest games that you had left. So to come away with a win is massive for Halifax. Obviously, you'll be a little bit disappointed that you didn't get a favour from Forest Green, which I actually thought you would. But you can only carry on doing your job and winning as many games as possible. If you put a good winning run together of 4, 5, 6 results, you will finish in the top 7 in the end, because there will be drop points. So yeah, massive for Halifax. Couple of nice goals as well, as I said, nicely worked goals. and big result. I think for Halifax, it's taking points off some of the teams that you're supposed to win. I think that's been a little bit of a problem sometimes through the season, where I think back to like Gateshead at home and a couple of other games like that, where you think, oh, Halifax should win that game, and then they end up on the wrong end of it. So I think it's just about making sure that they win the games that they're almost supposed to win. And I think if they do that, they'll give themselves every chance of sneaking into that top 7. So yeah, great day for Halifax. Boreham Wood, still an incredible season. As we've said many times, they're still 4th. They still look a threat. It's just a case of tightening up defensively. They'll be a little bit worried because obviously they conceded 3 to Brackley last weekend as well. So they do need to make sure they just tighten up a little bit at the back. Like I say, you can't focus on it too much because they do still score a lot of goals. But when you get in the playoffs, which they're going to be, you're going to have to be better defensively, otherwise you will get found out, I think, in the end. So yeah, work to do for Boreham Wood, but still an incredible season, of course.
Yeah, I thought that was the only place they were a little bit vulnerable on the day was defensively, Boreham Wood, if I'm being honest, particularly on that counter-attack. I think both set pieces as well. I think Halifax deserve a lot of credit for the game, in my opinion. I felt, like I keep repeating, I think Boreham Wood were a very good side. I don't think it didn't feel like it was particularly an off day for Boreham Wood. I thought overall, although we conceded twice, I thought we defended pretty well, to be honest, particularly when we scored the 3rd goal and they were putting pressure on us. You know, Abdul Malik, as you'd expect, was certainly dangerous, but I think within reason we contained him pretty well. And to be honest, I think overall it's a great win for Halifax and a well-worked win. One thing I will say though, Luke Garrard after the game, a manager that I've got an enormous amount of respect for, not just because of this season, but his time previously at Boreham Wood when they were last in this division. He actually came out and stated that he didn't think Halifax had to do much for the win. And for me, I felt it was a little bit of an insult, that, to be honest. He very downplayed Boreham Wood's performance. For me, he made out that that they were terrible. Of course, he sees them week in, week out. But I thought Halifax, worked the socks off for that win. I thought, throughout the 90, we defended well. We had that never say die attitude. When we went 1-0 up, we conceded. We still went on and tried to get the second, which we did. They equalised. Boreham Wood were on top. And I think it takes a lot of character against someone like Boreham Wood to then go up the other end and score a winner like we did. And it was a brilliant goal, I feel. I know you could say Boreham Wood very open, but the initial pass and the finish between Billy Waters and Owen Bray was brilliant. And of course, 2 substitutes coming on and being involved in the winner is brilliant for Halifax. And it was a much needed win because at this stage of the season now it does almost feel like Halifax can't slip up too much, particularly when you see Southend picking a result up like they did. Of course, moving on to Southend United 2, Forest Green Rovers 0. For the first time this season, Southend United have picked up a victory, I should say, against a side in the top 7. I do say first time this season. They did actually, of course, beat Halifax, but it is within Southend's hands to overtake them still. But yeah, a great win for Southend. I thought it was a comfortable win. I think they dominated the game, and if I'm being honest, I think if anything, they could have won by more. So a much needed victory for Southend, and it's good to kind of break that miniature curse, I suppose, against sides within the top 6.
Yeah, definitely agree with that. I think for Southend, obviously the win's the most important thing. The clean sheet's the next most important thing. And I'd say the next most important thing after that is the fact that that's going to give them some belief that they can do it if they do get in the top 7, which I've backed them to do. They've still got work to do and they need to take advantage of the games in hand that they've got. I know one of them is Rochdale on Tuesday, which will be difficult, but they need to take advantage, particularly with the other 2 games in hand. But it'll just give them, psychologically as much as anything, it'll give them that belief that they can beat one of the so-called big 5 or 6 teams in the division. Of course, we know Forest Green haven't been amazing since, I would say, mid-January. They've been a little bit Don't think flaky is fair, but they've been a little bit inconsistent. You're not quite sure what you're going to get from a Forest Green team at the moment, whereas there was a little bit more reliable earlier on in the season, I thought. But I agree with your assessment in terms of Southend. I think they deserve to win from what I've seen. I've obviously not watched the whole game, but I've seen the highlights and things like that, and it looks like Southend were well worthy of the 3 points. Both goals coming from corners, so it's good that they're managing to score from set pieces as well, which is massive. Well, at any level in football, but particularly the National League, we know how sort of focused it is on set pieces. If you're good at set pieces, you'll always have a chance at this level. So yeah, a really good day for Southend. Obviously, there's been a lot of unrest at the club. There's been a lot of criticism for the manager as well. I think some of that has been justified, to be fair, in recent times. But it was a good day for him. He made good decisions, good tactical decisions, good substitutions as well. And yeah, so it's a really good day for them, particularly in front of their own fans as well. And it'll just remind them that actually they can play football when they want to. They can turn it on. And they can win big football matches. So yeah, big day for Southend. Forest Green will be disappointed. They obviously won a couple of, won the last 2 games. And you maybe think, are they back? And then they've kind of gone backwards a little bit. I know Southend are a decent team, but they were a little bit lacklustre. I thought, didn't offer an awful lot. So yeah, Robbie Savage will be disappointed with that, and obviously disappointed with the result as well. But great day for Southend, much needed, particularly with the other results that we've already mentioned. It's important that they didn't lose any ground, and they haven't done that, and they've kept it in their hands as well, which for them will be the most important thing, I suppose, at this stage in the season. So yeah, good day for Southend. Forest Green need to do much better.
I think for Southend as well, it's the fact that it was in front of their own fans as well. I feel like Roots Hall, particularly recently, has become quite an intimidating place to actually play for the home supporters when it should be the case for the away team, I suppose, rather than the home side. Gateshead at home, Truro at home, there's an enormous amount of pressure, particularly when you've got 8,000 or 9,000 fans behind you, that you're going to go out there and absolutely put them to the sword. And of course, the drop points in both of those games, which will be a little bit frustrating from their perspective. But for them just to get the 3 points, a much needed 3 points against a playoff side in Forest Green, it's a massive boost to them, not just in terms of the 3 points, but the calibre of opposition against a side within the top 6 at the moment. I do want to speak about Forest Green, though. Of course, we speak about them. We'll speak about them potentially being back after defeating Gateshead and Aldershot, which I don't think are particularly easy places to go. Yet they managed to get maximum points. But it feels like they're back to square one now against Southend away from home. 3 wins in the last 6 games for Forest Green Rovers. In fact, actually 4 wins in the last 9 as well, only picking up 2 victories. I know as a Halifax fan, particularly after Saturday now, I'm looking at Forest Green as a side that we could overtake at the moment. Of course, I've still got my eye on Southend, who are below us. It's in their hands to overtake us. But, Forest Green seem like the side that are on free fall at the moment. The reason that they're probably in the position they're in is because of that form from probably the start of the season till December time. That's probably why they're still 6th. I think since January time, they probably on form for a mid-table finish, to be honest, if the season were to start in January. So now, with 8 games remaining, is it a case of them, limping over the line, or do you still expect Forest Green to pick up in the next few weeks?
So I agree with a lot of that. Their playoff position is definitely not safe at the moment. I'm still sat here feeling like Scunthorpe need 1 or 2 wins. So if we need 1 or 2 wins, Forest Green need 3 or 4 maybe. Obviously Forest Green have played an extra game as well. So they're definitely not safe yet. They'll be a little bit worried, Forest Green, I think. If I was to put my neck on the line, I think they'll just get over the line in terms of getting in the playoffs. I think, as you say, I think the first half of the season will be mostly the reason for that. but they do need to pick up quite quickly. They need to get a couple of wins. If they were to lose the next sort of 2 or 3 games, they're then going to put enormous pressure on them last couple in terms of getting results. So yeah, honestly, I think they'll just get in because they have created that gap and they've had that gap for a while to eighth. But it feels like they're stumbling over the line, and it doesn't give you a lot of confidence. I don't think it'll give the Forest Green fans too much confidence if they were to go into the playoffs. I think you've either got to sort of just get in at the end, or you've got to have some real momentum behind you generally. And it feels like Forest Green are doing neither at the moment. So I think they'll be worried going into the playoffs. I'm not convinced they'll win the playoffs. I'll look a bit stupid now if they do, but I just can't see Forest Green going up. I don't think they've been good enough, particularly in the last few months. They're leaking too many sloppy goals. I know both goals on Saturday were set pieces, but they were still too simple from a defensive aspect. So yeah, there's something just not quite clicking there at the moment. Like I say, there's still a good side. I mean, Kyle McAllister, I really rate him. I think he's a fantastic player. They've obviously got other players in there as well. Yeah, they've got some good individuals. They need to get back to being a team, get back to doing the basics a little bit better, I would say, Luke, to be honest with you. Just getting back to being a little bit more difficult to beat. They're a little bit too easy to play against. So yeah, a bit worrying for Forest Green, but I do think they'll just get over the line in terms of getting in the top 7. I'm not saying they won't finish 6th or 7th now, similar to Scunthorpe to a certain extent, but I do think they'll be in there come the end of the season. And then it's just about turning up for a couple of weeks in the playoffs, which, look, it's always possible. Anything can happen in playoffs. Crazy things happen in playoffs. You only have to look at last season with Oldham. There was Grimsby a few years ago, and they went away to Notts County and Wrexham and beat them both. I even look at the National League North and South. You look at the likes of Kidderminster that have done it from 6th. Boreham Wood last season as well, going up from the National League South. So yeah, it can happen, particularly with the 16 playoffs, and particularly with it being only one leg in every tie as well. I think that makes a big difference. That's almost an advantage to the side who is the underdog to a certain extent, because you've only got to beat that team over 90 minutes rather than beat them over 180. So yeah, Forest Green will still be hopeful, but I think they'll be worried by how many goals they're leaking. So yeah, not good for Forest Green really at the moment.
Of course, probably the shock of the game week potentially. Tamworth 2, Carlisle United 1. Of course, it was quite a big topic, wasn't it, on the last game week about Mark Hughes? Is he the right man? Can we really see him taking Carlisle into the Football League? And I said no. And that was after, I think, dropping points at home to Southend. Never mind going away to Tamworth. I think we both backed Carlisle to win, but I think we both felt it could have been a bit of an awkward game. And of course, it turned out like that. They actually took the lead in the second half before Tamworth came back and scored 2 goals through Oliver Lynch, who's actually up to 12 goals this season now at just 21 years of age as well. But yeah, disappointing for Carlisle. I think the only saving grace is that Boreham Wood also lost.
Yeah, I mean, I did predict Carlisle to win last week. I think I predicted 1-0, but what I did say is if you're not defensively at it at Tamworth, you will get bullied, you'll get beat up. And I thought that ended up being the case. They showed that they're vulnerable at the back again, which is what we have said for the last few weeks in terms of Carlisle defensively. And Tamworth were doing what Tamworth do well, which is get balls in the box quick. Long throws, good set pieces. Yeah, really good day for Tamworth. Bad one for Carlisle. There's a lot of negativity around there at the moment, and I think a lot of it is probably justified. I think what's worrying Carlisle fans the most, it's not so much the results, it's actually the performances as well. I don't think they feel like they've really performed well for quite a long time now. I mean, what you would say about Carlisle in the first half of the season was that they struggled against the teams around them. apart from Scunthorpe, who they beat twice, the other results were not good. But actually, against the mid-table and the bottom sides, they were generally comfortably winning. Whereas in the last few weeks, we're starting to see a couple of really disappointing results come in. So I think they'll be quite worried. As you say, they'll be relieved that Boreham Wood lost as well. So that's one positive to come out of it, I suppose, for Carlisle. I still think they'll get third in the end. But they're another side I'm not convinced by in the playoffs. And I think a lot of their fans will probably say the same. Again, I know we say it about sort of Boreham Wood and Forest Green and Scunthorpe that they're too vulnerable at the back at the moment and they're too easy to play through. A lot of the goals that they're conceding are just too simple. There was one on Saturday where they've just cut straight through Carlisle and obviously put the ball across and it's gone in. It's too simple. It's a nice goal from Tamworth's perspective, but it's disappointing if you're a Carlisle fan. I think what will frustrate Carlisle most on Saturday is the fact that they actually did the hard work in terms of getting the lead. And I would argue that was a little bit against the run of play as well. You know, Tamworth played pretty well in that first half, but didn't have anything to show for it. And then Carlisle get the lead, and you're thinking, right, you know, now's time to kick on and get these 3 points. And then they just went backwards. They got even worse and obviously conceded a couple of goals. So yeah, little bit of a surprise result. I'm not amazed. You know, stranger things have happened. I did say I thought it'd be a difficult day. And yeah, it happened in the end. Carlisle had to be at it defensively, and in the end, they just weren't, and they got exactly what they deserved. I would say, Luke, to be honest with you. So yeah, great day for Tamworth, though. Massive credit to Tamworth. Again, they're having a great season. They'll be delighted with their team and what they're doing, the desire, and the sort of the attitude that they're showing towards every game. I know they're sort of mid-table at the moment, but they're still playing like it really matters. There's a few sides in and around that area that are starting to play. It sounds a little bit disrespectful, but some of them are maybe playing like they're already on the beach. I'm thinking maybe like Solihull and a couple of other teams like that where, yeah, their season's drifting, but Tamworth, they're still having a good go. So their supporters will be proud with that, definitely.
I find Carlisle a very negative team, to be honest, considering, you know, the size of the club and some of the players that I think they've got. I think throughout the season, for me, they've relied on individual brilliance to get them through a lot of games. I think they've got a lot of cracking individuals, particularly on the forward front. You know, Linney, I know he's gone off the boil, but, you know, players like Armstrong have come in, Kelly have come in, Hadji Boy even recently has really improved as well at Carlisle. But I find them really negative. For a club like Carlisle in this division, I don't feel they go out to dominate games, which I feel they should be doing, to be honest. You know, we saw them finally, you know, score against Tamworth, which you mentioned was through the run of play. But instead of then trying to dominate the game after that and potentially pushing for a second, they always seem to sit back. And for me, I don't think Carlisle are good enough defensively to be able to actually do that. You know, if you think of Bournemouth in the previous years when they used to be competing towards the top, last time they were in this league, they'd get a first goal and then they'd shut out like Carlisle, but they were always good enough defensively to be able to do that. And I don't think Carlisle are. You know, if you actually look at them defensively, they're not awful in terms of the amount of goals they're conceding, but I think individual errors are what are costing them, and that's why I feel, you know, when they're getting the lead, I don't think they're good enough to be able to shut up shop, to be honest. You know, I've questioned their back four throughout the whole season, to be honest. I think they've got one standout centre-half, and I think all the other three, whoever you put in there, to be honest, are all liabilities. I think, you know, they're all good ability-wise, but I think they've all got mistakes in them, to be honest, whoever you play with Morgan Feeney. And once again, it felt like after they took the lead, you know, Tamworth came back, soaked up the pressure, and they managed to score 2 goals. 2 poor goals as well. You know, it's credit to Tamworth for getting the victory at home, but I didn't want particularly impressed by either of the goals. I thought they were avoidable. And, you know, even the Southend game at home against Southend, who I think have been renowned all season to probably struggle to score goals considering their position. I feel, to be honest, I don't think they're a particularly high-scoring team, if I'm being honest, particularly when they go behind. I've never got much confidence they'll come back. And when I saw Carlisle were 2-0 up, I thought, yeah, that's it. That'll be game over now. Carlisle should be able to win that. But instead, they sit back, they soak up the pressure, and they drop 2 points at home against Southend. So for me, there's too many concerning signs. And I look at Bwood at the moment, and I know they lost at the weekend, but I've still got a lot more confidence in them finishing in the top 3 than I do Carlisle, to be honest, overall. I'm really not sure about them going into the playoffs. I know based on the season, 75 points in 38 games is pretty impressive for a side that's just come down, but I still just think, for me, overall, defensively, they've got too many players in there. They've got too many mistakes in them. And I don't think tactically they get it right. And as I keep repeating, I don't think Mark Hughes is the man to take Carlisle back into the Football League.
Yeah. As you say, I think the biggest issue, like I said earlier on, I think it's not so much the results. When you look at the points tally, you actually think it's not actually that bad. It's not that far off 2 points a game, which generally will put you at the right end of any table. I mean, if Carlisle were in League Two with their points tally, they'd still have a really good chance of automatic promotion. Which sounds ridiculous given how critical we are being of Carlisle. Obviously, part of that is due to Rochdale and York's brilliance, and we can't get away from that. Even if Carlisle were sort of 9 or 10 points better off, they'd still have very little chance at this stage in the season. So it's not so much about the actual table and some of the results they've had. It's more the way that they're performing. And as you say, that there's been a few sort of, let's just say, questionable decisions from Mark Hughes, who is an experienced manager, by the way. I mean, who are we to criticise a former Premier League manager? But I still think he is getting quite a lot wrong at the moment. Obviously, that's just my opinion, what I've seen of it. There's been quite a few negative substitutions where I'm thinking, you're 1-0 up in a game or 2-1 up in a game, and you're thinking, right, be ruthless now. Go and finish this game off, and show that you are a great team rather than just being a good team. Be a great team and go and be ruthless and finish the game. And there's been too many games where they've just allowed the games to drift, in my opinion. And you will get found out for that. If you just try and sit back every single week, you will get found out and you will drop a lot of points, particularly when, as we've said, with Carlisle, you are not a great defensive side. And I think their fans would admit that, to be fair, that they are not a great defensive side. Probably Morgan Feeney aside, who is an exception. He's a fantastic footballer. I think he could easily play in League Two, no doubt. But as you say, the rest of them, they are not amazing defenders. And I know that sounds quite ruthless, but that's just the fact. They've conceded too many sloppy goals, and they've dropped too many points. So, I can see exactly why Carlisle are frustrated. I think Hughes will at least get until the end of the season. I don't think you can go and sort of sack Mark Hughes now. I think that would be a little bit... I know some fans probably would. I think that would be a little bit... hasty, I would say. You're only sort of 8 or 9 games from the end of the season. You are still sat in third, and you do still have a chance of getting promoted. Do I think they'll get promoted? Probably not. But Mark Hughes, I would say, deserves the chance to at least try and get Carlisle promoted. I think if they don't get promoted, then I think there's potentially a decision to be made in the summer. Obviously, I don't know how the Carlisle sort of directors work and what their feelings are about Mark Hughes. Obviously, we'll never know that. But I do think there's a potential in the summer that Carlisle might look for a change if they don't get promoted. But as I say, I certainly wouldn't do anything now. I wouldn't sort of look for a change a few games at the end. I don't think that would be right, really. But I think there's huge expectations. Carlisle are a massive club. We know that. They've been in League One. They get 8, 9, 10,000 fans. And look, they're a big club and they expect better. They expect to be in the Football League. But they're not on their own. There are other clubs in this league that you would say are sort of traditional standard EFL clubs, but you're down here for a reason because you've had a few poor seasons, whether that's poor managers, poor ownership, poor players, poor defending, whatever it is. It's probably a combination of all of it, in fairness, but you nobody's bigger than the division is what I would say, and you're here because you deserve to be here because you haven't performed in recent years. So yeah, disappointing for Carlisle, but yeah, they've still obviously got a chance of getting promoted, and their fans will expect them to do that because they are a big club, definitely.
Yeah, it's not necessarily them finishing third, which I'd be concerned about, to be honest. I think the playoffs for me, I just think if they had a home tie in the semi-final, even if they finish third, they're coming up against a side that's going to have momentum. For me, I don't think Carlisle will be able to deal with that pressure as well. So I can't see them getting promoted. I'll be shocked, to be honest, if Carlisle get promoted this season overall. I think they're too vulnerable defensively, and to be honest, I think there's signs of inconsistency as well. At times, out of the blue, you just see a bad performance out of nowhere, even when they win, and you're like, where's that performance come from? We played very well the week before, so yeah, I'm a little bit concerned for Carlisle. I can't see them getting promoted this season. Let's look towards the bottom of the table now, before we probably look towards the top two and move on to Tuesday night. Actually, before we do that, let's look at probably the highest goal-scoring game of the game week. Wealdstone 5, Solihull Moors 1. No wins in 7 for Solihull Moors. Now, you used the term over earlier that they're on the beach. Potentially that is the case. They probably need about 1 or 2 wins to confirm safety. But for Wealdstone, it's only a couple of weeks we were thinking they could get dragged into the relegation battle, and now they've won 3 games on the bounce under new manager Gary Waddock, and they've scored 12 goals in that time. I think it's proving potentially that letting Sam Cox go and bringing in Gary Waddock was the correct decision, although it was quite a controversial one at the time.
Yeah, I would agree with that. I think we probably need to see more of Wealdstone in terms of how they perform next season to judge the manager properly. I think we see it quite often, don't we, with all managers in terms of a new manager bounce, and I think they've got that at the moment. But the question for Wealdstone is, can they sustain this? Can they keep that going? In terms of next season, we know that they're pretty much, well, they are safe now, I would say. So it's time for Wealdstone to start planning for next season in terms of their recruitment. They've got a little bit of extra time on the others that are, for example, going to be in the playoffs. They've got an extra sort of month on them in terms of planning and recruiting. In terms of Saturday, it was a great performance from Wealdstone. That they'll have been really happy with that. What I would say is, from Solihull's perspective, nowhere near good enough. I think they've let their fans down there really with their performance. Couple of nice goals from Wealdstone, but a couple of avoidable ones as well, I would say, from Solihull's perspective. They need to be careful. I think they still need at least 1 win, Solihull. I think their fans will be quite disappointed with what they've done in the last 4, 5, 6 weeks. They're another side that are conceding far too many goals, far too easy to play against. And like I say, that I think the effort was maybe there on Saturday, but there wasn't that bite, there wasn't that desire to go and win the ball, go and press them high. They didn't really believe in what they're doing, or they didn't look like they believed in what they were doing. The actual goal that they scored came from a mistake from Baptiste. It's sort of a long sort of hanging cross, and he's gone to kind of tip it over the bar, and it's kind of just dropped at Connor Wilkinson's feet, and he's tapped it in. I'd say that's the only bright spark is Connor Wilkinson scored again for them. Really impressive player. He's in really good form. He's been a key player for Solihull in recent weeks, so I think he can come out of it with some credit. But in terms of a team performance, not good enough from Solihull at all. They will, their fans and the manager will want a lot more from them. They're a better side than what they're showing at the moment. I've seen a few Solihull games this season, and the ones I've watched, I've been quite impressed. They played a real good brand of football, and they know what the National League's all about. They've been in this league for quite a few years now, and they're pretty good at what they do. But they'll be disappointed recently. They've dropped well below their standards. But credit has to go to Wealdstone. They've done incredibly well in the last few weeks. And they've obviously got their FA Trophy run as well, which I think is a little added bonus for them. I think finances are huge for Wealdstone. I mean, they're huge for every club at this level, but particularly for clubs like that. So that'll be massive for them as well in terms of being able to improve potentially facilities, but also the budget for next season. You'd like to think that'll be a little bit better now, given the cut run. So yeah, I think overall Wealdstone will be quite happy with their season. They'll be particularly happy with Saturday's performance for sure. 12:30 kickoff as well, where actually there hasn't been a massive amount of goals generally this season, so it was a little bit of an outlier in the end. But yeah, massive for Wealdstone, but Solihull must do much, much, much better.
Looking towards the bottom then, of course, Truro losing on home soil to Hartlepool. It does keep Hartlepool within the shout of the playoffs. Of course, a game in hand on Halifax, which would take them just 2 points behind Halifax at the moment. Of course, we've both got our opinions on that. And we don't think they're going to be within a shout in the next few weeks. But a win is a win, a long way to go. As for Truro now, we spoke about the last podcast that they'd probably have to win every game. I think they actually would now, to be honest. Even if they won every game, they'd be on 52 points come the end of the season, which in previous years doesn't necessarily guarantee you to stay up. So, yeah, I think we can officially say that they're going down now. As for Gateshead and Morecambe, and even Braintree, all dropping points. Gateshead and Morecambe both took the lead in their matches, and would have been two huge wins for them. Gateshead 1-0 up against Sutton, conceded quite late on against Sutton, who I think Sutton on the day were pretty good, to be fair as well. I think it was quite a good footballing match, although it was only 1-1, I felt. But nevertheless, Gateshead will be disappointed with that, as we keep repeating this stage of the season. It is purely about results, but still a point at home. As for Morecambe, of course, playing a fellow relegation rival in Braintree, Morecambe took the lead late on, probably felt that'd be the winner, but good character from Braintree to score a late equaliser, and all three of those sides now are all sitting on 34 points. It keeps them all within the bottom four. Yeah, let's talk about Morecambe Braintree then. Morecambe taking the lead before Braintree equalised. Yeah, what was your assessment of that and the impacts that has overall?
Yeah, look, I think Morecambe have been really good in the last few weeks. I think they'll be a little bit frustrated with that result. I think they'd have fancied themselves. I know we fancied them to do the job on Saturday. I think it's definitely a better point for Braintree. I mean, I did say on here last week that I said that Braintree would probably find results where we're not necessarily expecting them to. And I think that was a good example of that. They looked sort of dead and buried at 1-0. You're thinking, I mean, the penalty's in the 87th minute, so you're thinking Morecambe have edged it, they've done the job. And then Braintree, they didn't give in. The confidence would have been low, particularly after the Wealdstone performance last week. But they've bounced back, and they'll take the point, definitely, particularly equalising pretty much in the last kick of the game. Obviously, the goalkeeper getting an assist as well, which was quite funny, unless you're a Morecambe fan, obviously. But for everybody else, for a neutral, it's quite funny to watch that. Yeah, decent for Braintree. Wasn't the best game of football, but I would expect that at this time of the season. You've got two sides that are fighting for their lives. You're generally not going to get the best game or the best spectacle. Again, it's all about the result at the end of the day more than performances. Jack Nolan will be disappointed. He obviously scored his penalty. But when you look at the corner, the Braintree equaliser, he did actually have an opportunity to clear the ball, and he's completely missed it. And that's allowed Mason Terry, the Braintree goalkeeper, to put the ball across. And obviously, it was a nice finish, to be fair, in the end. But they'll be disappointed with that because they could have avoided that by clearing the ball. So frustrating for them. Both sides are still in it. I think the fact that we're talking about Morecambe as potentially staying up is still a compliment to them. Same as Gateshead. In terms of what they've done in the last 6 or 7 games between them. We've now got a relegation fight to talk about, whereas at one point it looked like Well, particularly Morecambe and Gateshead, maybe not so much Braintree, but particularly them two, it looked like they were dead and buried, and we were going to sort of be sat here now just talking about how many points they were going to get rather than whether they were going to stay up or not. So I think still you have to give a lot of compliment to Morecambe and Gateshead in terms of what they've done. I think they'll both be slightly disappointed this weekend in terms of the fact that they were both winning the game and they're not playing, with all due respect to Braintree and Sutton, you're not playing necessarily the best opposition. So I think they'll be slightly frustrated, but a point is better than nothing, and it could be the point at the end of the season that does make a difference. You just never know. I think in terms of our our bottom four predictions that we made last week, I said would be a little bit clearer by the time we next came on. I don't think we are, to be honest, because everybody's drawn, so we're still not really any clearer in terms of who's actually going to finish fifth from bottom. Yeah, it's. I think it's going to go down to the last day, to be honest, with at least a couple of teams. It's getting really interesting. Yeah, disappointing. I think Morecambe will be most disappointed. I think to be leading in the 96th minute and not win the game, you're naturally going to be gutted about that. That's. I mean, that would be the same for any team. So yeah, a little bit disappointed for them, but a point is better than nothing. That's the kind of game at the start of the season under Ash Singh that they'd have found a way to lose. So at least they're not losing, and they're still picking a point up.
Yeah, I suppose the Braintree, although it was only a point, I think to get a last-minute equaliser like that might just give them that little bit of momentum after a couple of difficult weeks, losing to, Gateshead, losing to Wealdstone, the games that they should probably be winning if they want to survive. But, that might just give them that little bit of momentum. Of course, they're actually in action next time on Saturday against Scunthorpe. Of course, Brackley Town, though, the consolation is that they still sit outside of the drop zone at the moment, with all the sides below them drawing. But a 4-1 thumping on home soil is very alarming against Woking as well. Of course, Woking have improved under the interim management there with Jake Hyde and Craig Ross. But yeah, very alarming for Brackley. They won a bad run before that, I think it was fair to say. I looked at a lot of them and felt there were a lot of tough fixtures there, and a lot of them were away. And I think I've always had more confidence at home. I've said that they don't concede many at home, which they haven't, to be fair to them, throughout the season. But of course, that went out of the window against Woking, conceding 4 on home soil. A damaging result, to be honest, not just in terms of, a must-win game, in my opinion, also in terms of the confidence levels. That can't be doing them any good, losing at home by 4-1 against Woking.
No, absolutely not. I mean, I've said it on here for a couple of weeks now that I am really worried about Brackley, and that's not me sort of picking on Brackley or sort of disrespecting Brackley. It's just the fact that their form, it feels like they've been sliding for a long time, and I've said that last week. I said it the week before, and I've said it, to be fair, for about a month now in terms of Brackley. This would have been a game where they'd have fancied themselves to get something. To get thumped like that is, it's really concerning for Brackley. Great result for Woking, of course, which I'll come on to in a minute. But in terms of Brackley, I think it's 7 defeats now in a row, which, at this stage in the season, that's a real concern for them. They're too easy to play through again. Another team conceding far too many goals, which is not really what I associate with Brackley. I associate them.
They conceded 21 goals in the last 7 games as well, to mention, which, is averaging 3 goals conceded per game, which, as you mentioned, you wouldn't associate with them.
No, absolutely not. They obviously won the National League North title last season, and they won that title really on their defence and being really hard to beat. And you knew that when you went to Brackley, even in the first half of the season, this season, to be fair, you knew when you went to Brackley, you were going to have a difficult game and you're going to be really up against it. Whereas in recent weeks, they look really low on confidence, which obviously they will be. They don't look particularly convincing in what they're doing in terms of when they are attacking. You're not really convinced. You're not feeling like they're going to score goals. And that's Every time the opposition go forward, you're thinking this could be a goal here. They're conceding sort of clear-cut chances. I mean, you look at Woking's goals on Saturday. A lot of them were avoidable. They were so kind of simple, really, just so basic, and you think that that's just far too easy. That's not like Brackley. And I know we've spoken about the manager change and things like that, and I don't think it's necessarily helped them. I know he's not been there for a long time, but it feels like they're too expansive, I would say, for their own good. I think it's okay if you've got the attacking play. You know, if you've got really good attacking players and you're going to score 3-4 goals a game, like for example Boreham Wood, then you can get away with it. But I think if you haven't quite got the firepower, then it's almost a little bit naive to play that way. And I think that's what they are at the minute. I think they're a little bit naive. They need to understand the situation that they're in. They need to get back to basics in terms of defending their box better and being a lot harder to beat. So that's what Brackley need to do in the next few weeks. If they're going to have any chance of staying up, I'm still going to predict them to go down. I have done for a little while. I hope they don't, because they're a well-run club. They're not the biggest club in the league, and I think they're doing really well to be here. But they need to improve, and fast now. Quickly on Woking, I thought it was good from them. Obviously, they still scored 4 goals. We can't just criticise Brackley. We've got to praise Woking as well. They're another side, sort of mid-table, you would think. I know they've still got a few games in hand where they could potentially make a late playoff push, but I can't see them doing enough to really be in the conversation. They obviously had their FA Trophy run as well, which they'll be obviously proud about. So, yeah, good day for Woking. They'll want to finish the season as strongly as possible now. And that was a good way to go about it. So, yeah, good away performance for them and their fans. They'll be delighted with that. But a lot of work to do for Brackley still.
Yeah, concerning times, particularly when you look at Andy Wing as well. You know, very well respected manager from his time at Solihull, but he's never been in this type of situation before, where, you know, that's something that, you know, Jim Bentley, Braintree's manager, and Gateshead's manager, and Rob Elliott, they've all got on the side, is that they've all been involved in this type of situation before. Maybe not Rob Elliott, but, you know, Braintree and Morecambe certainly do. The final 2 games, I feel like a broken record when I speak about these 2 sides now. Aldershot 3, York... Oh, no, Aldershot 0, I should say. York 3. And, of course, Eastleigh 1, Rochdale 3. Casey Petit's goal, I suppose, for Rochdale is the thing that stands out in both of these 2 games. But there's not too much to speak about, because it just seems like it's routine wins for these 2 sides. Great win for both sides.
Yeah, I think you've summed that up really well, Luke. There's not a lot that I can come on here and say that I'm sure you haven't already said all season, and that I haven't already said all season. They're both well-oiled machines. They both know what they're doing. They're confident. They're tough to score against. They've got attacking threats. I think Rochdale are even starting to score some more goals now than what they were originally, which is good for them. In terms of York, Josh Stones was unplayable again. I know he got the goal, and I mean the first goal reminded me of his goal at Scunthorpe a few weeks ago, where he's just, no disrespect to the Aldershot defender, but he's sort of made him look like a little boy. He's held him off and laid it off so well, and obviously it's a great strike from Ollie Banks in the end. York will be delighted. I don't think they'd have expected Rochdale to drop any points at Eastleigh. And to be fair to Rochdale, I don't think they would have expected York to drop any points at Aldershot. I think Aldershot, I was expecting to be a little bit of a tougher game, I would say, than the one Rochdale had. I think I predicted a 3-0 Rochdale, so I wasn't too far off with that. I thought they'd have quite a comfortable afternoon there. I don't think we can really be surprised. I mean, is it going to go down to the last day? Probably. Do I see them dropping many points, either of them? Not really, to be honest. I think the game in hand tomorrow, I don't know when this podcast is going out. Obviously, we're recording on Monday, but the game tomorrow is massive for Rochdale. It's the game in hand, and it's a tough one as well. Southend will be full of confidence from from Saturday's result. And as we know, Southend is naturally a tough place for any side to go. So it'd be interesting to see how Rochdale get on tomorrow night. I think if they manage to win at Southend, they're going to really start to believe that it's actually going to be their year. If they don't, York will obviously be thrilled, and they'll be right back in it. I still think it's fairly 50-50. I'm still giving York the edge because I've backed them all along, so I'm not gonna kind of flip flop now and say, oh, I think it's going to be Rochdale. But Rochdale are giving themselves every chance. I thought after the couple of draws that they had that they were gonna. I didn't think they were going to collapse because they're too much of a good side to go and collapse. But I thought they might draw and lose a couple more games than they have done. But they've both been relentless. They're both going to finish on 3 figures comfortably. And as I've said before, we have to respect that. You have to respect brilliance. You don't see these kind of teams very often, particularly in the National League. You might see it in the Premier League. You think about Pep Guardiola's Man City and Jurgen Klopp with Liverpool. In the 5th tier of English football, you don't expect teams to be setting the standard that they're setting. And I think you have to have a lot of respect for that. But yeah, as you say, no great shock on Saturday that they both got the job done fairly comfortably in the end. So yeah, the title race rolls on to next week.
Yeah, it does. There's not much else to say. I suppose for York at Aldershot, I backed them to win, but felt like a really comfortable win for York, and I thought Aldershot might have put a better game in, to be honest. Of course, keeping a clean sheet, York did as well. And as for Rochdale, I know they conceded late on, but it was another straightforward win for them. And you have to give them credit. Neither of them are letting up at all or slipping up at all. Particularly Rochdale, I still back York to win this title. What I am going to say is Southend away on Tuesday night. Now, when I've been looking at the fixtures recently, this has been the one where I look at Rochdale and think maybe this is the game where they can drop points, or there's a strong possibility that they might not get all 3 points away at Southend. Let's speak about Tuesday's fixtures then now. Rochdale's game in hand is, of course, against Southend on Tuesday evening. Potentially not playing Southend at the best of times after they've just finally defeated a side in the top 6 at the weekend at Roots Hall. As well for Southend, particularly with Halifax's resurgence recently. It also means that Southend, having to keep the standards up as well. They can't be slipping off because they need to make these games in hand count over Halifax. So it should, be a really good game when you think of it. How are you seeing this one going? Do you think Rochdale will be able to find a way to win? Of course, in the reverse fixture, they did actually come from behind, I believe, and scored late on in this one.
Yeah, it's a really difficult one to call. If you'd have asked me before the weekend, I'd have said definitely Rochdale. But I think with Southend winning on Saturday, as I said earlier, I think it will give them a lot of belief that they can go toe to toe with some of the best in this division. I wouldn't be amazed if it finished a draw, which I don't think would be disastrous for either. But equally, I wouldn't be surprised if Rochdale go there and give a professional performance and win 2-0 or something like that. Difficult one to call. Southend will want to give Rochdale a good game, particularly on the back of Saturday, to prove, like I say, that they can do it. I think their fans will be really disappointed if they go and sort of get hammered by Rochdale now. Look, I mean, getting hammered by Rochdale and York can happen to anybody in this division, but they'll want to give at least a good account of themselves and make it really difficult for Rochdale. I'm sure York fans, with them not playing, I'm sure they'll have one keen eye on the game. I think what I would say is, I think if Rochdale go there and win, I think York fans will think, that's not what we want. They'll be praying for a favour from Southend. You look at Rochdale's fixtures. I know they've got to come to Scunthorpe. To be honest, I do expect them to do the job on that particular night. I think this is one of Rochdale's toughest games left. Before that, obviously, the last game against York. So they'll be praying that Rochdale drop at least 2 points, if not 3. It'll send a message, I think, to York as well. It'll really not knock them back, but it'll make them think, oh goodness me, are they actually going to drop any points? Because the thing is, if Rochdale don't drop any points between now and the end of the season, they will win the league, and there's nothing that York will be able to do about it. I think it's still in Rochdale's hands, isn't it? If they win every single game, so yeah, it's a big night. There's no doubt about that. Rochdale will have to be at it if they're going to get the 3 points. But given the standard that they've set this season, I would expect them to be at it, and it's a case of how well Southend can defend on the night. They are going to be up against it. They're not going to have a lot of the ball, I wouldn't think. Rochdale are a possession-based team. We've seen that a lot this season, particularly the midfield. They really like to get on the ball and move it about, with the likes of Petit and Devante Rodney and a few other players as well. So, yeah, they'll have to be at it defensively in terms of their out-of-shape work, I would think. Then it's just about can they nick a couple of goals or a goal on the counter attack. So yeah, big night. It has huge ramifications not only for the title race but obviously for the playoff race as well. So again, we'll know a lot more after Tuesday night in terms of both of them things, I would think.
Yeah, for me, when I look at Rochdale's remaining games, I think this is the one where I could see them dropping points. If not, then I think it kind of swerves, and I think a lot of people will start to be backing Rochdale to go on to win this league because you just wouldn't be able to see where they drop points. And I think from Rochdale's perspective until the end of the season, what they want to be doing is be, at least 3 points ahead, if not, well, at least 4 points ahead, I should say, of, York City. So that, that final day that they've already won the title. I don't think they'll be wanting, even if it's a fact of York having a chance of winning that game, they won't want that because they've got such a terrible record against York, over the last couple of seasons, being thumped away from home as well and losing in the FA, was it the FA Cup or FA Trophy, I believe, as well, early FA Cup it was earlier in the season.
Qualifying, I think, yeah.
So for me, when I look at this one, I think York will be praying that Rochdale drop points, but I think if Rochdale do go here and win, then I think a lot of people would have to say that Rochdale are firm favourites to go on to win the league because you wouldn't be able to see where they drop points. Yes, there's Scunthorpe, but I'm like you, I'd fancy them to win that one. And bar York on the final day, there's not many others, to be honest, left, I think, for Rochdale for them to drop points. In terms of predictions, I think they will for this one, to be fair. I think this is the game where they'll drop points, and I think any other season it'd be a good point, but I'm going for a 1-1 draw for me. I think it's a difficult place to go, and I think Southend performed well against them in the reverse fixture, and they got quite fortunate late on to win that one. So I think it'll be a draw. How do you see it going?
Oh, this is a tough one. I've said I wouldn't be surprised if it was a draw, but I equally wouldn't be surprised if Rochdale turn up and do a real job. This is one of them, isn't it? I'll go for Rochdale. I'll tell you what, I'll go for a 1-0 Rochdale. But as I say, I wouldn't be surprised if it was a draw either. I think at this stage in the season, Rochdale just need to win games. They need to win every single game. So based on that, I'll go for Rochdale to win. Obviously, Southend's record still isn't great against obviously the top 7. I know it's improved slightly after Saturday, but yeah, I'll go for a 1-0 Rochdale, but it's a really tough one to call. It could go either way, this one. It just depends which Southend turns up, I suppose. But if Rochdale are at it, then they'll win the game because they're at least the second best side in this division. But you could make a case to say they're the best side in the division. So yeah, if they're on top form, then Southend will struggle to cope. But if Southend defend well, then they've got every chance, definitely.
Just some of the other fixtures that are taking place. Woking take on Yeovil. Crewe, of course, facing Scunthorpe. Scunthorpe will be looking to win that one and back up Saturday's win against Altrincham and just firmer confirm that promotion, that playoff spot, I should say. Other games as well, probably two of the biggest, of course, towards the bottom. Gateshead versus Wealdstone. Gateshead needing to win that one on home soil, but won't be easy against the Wealdstone side that have won 3 in a row. And of course, Brackley, potentially a bit of a derby this one against Solihull Moors. For me, that is certainly a must-win for Brackley, to be honest, on home soil, which I think is what they're going to rely on if they want to survive this season against an out-of-form Solihull Moors side. Finally, then, I want to hear your banker, and if you had to pick a banker, which you're going to have to, and then also the potential upset. Mine is Southend to get a point against Rochdale. I think that would be seen as an upset potentially. What's your banker then? I know it's quite a hard one and upset for this game week. Tough.
I'm gonna get some stick for this, but this is one of them where I hope I'm completely wrong. I'm actually a little bit worried about Scunthorpe going to Truro. I don't really know why. Obviously, I'm a fan, so it's natural to be a little bit more pessimistic. I just think with obviously it's a long journey. The thing is with Truro is they haven't been getting hammered. A lot of games have been really competitive. We've got no Callum Roberts again. He's not going to be back until at least the Braintree game. Yeah, I'm going to be called negative and everything. I've predicted us to win most times in the last couple of weeks. I actually think it could finish a draw. I hope it doesn't. But yeah, I'm a little bit worried about us dropping points actually. But again, I hope I'm completely wrong on that one. And I look silly come 10 o'clock on Tuesday or whatever it is. In terms of the banker,
it's tough, isn't it?
I don't think they're really.
Ain't really one, is there? I suppose I'll give you the odds for it. So Solihull to beat Brackley, Solihull would be favourite. So if you back Brackley to get something, then that would be one. Also, Gateshead versus Wealdstone, that's a tough one because I think Wealdstone are slight favourites to win that one. So for Gateshead to beat Wealdstone, and then Woking versus Yeovil, Woking come into that one as favourites. So I don't know if that helps you out at all.
Yeah,
it's a tough game week, isn't it, to have to pick one?
Yeah, I mean, to be honest with you, I wouldn't be surprised if we're talking about teams to win. I wouldn't be surprised if a couple of them games that you've mentioned are draws. If I was to put my neck on the line in terms of Gateshead, Wealdstone, and potentially even Brackley, Solihull, I wouldn't be surprised if both of them games finish a draw. If I have to pick one, I'd probably pick Woking. I think Yeovil have been sliding for a little while. They've obviously picked up a couple of reasonable results and got a couple of late winners, but I think Woking, particularly at home, Tuesday night. Yeah, I'll go for Woking, but I'm not. If I'm being honest with you, I'm not totally convinced with my pick. I think there's a lot of real close ones there, and I think, like I say, I think there might be a couple of draws across the division potentially as well. So yeah, I'll go for Woking, but I'm not totally convinced with my pick.
Yeah, so my banker is going to be actually Scunthorpe to go to Truro. Even this one, there's a slight. Yeah, I know you can't do it because you're. I wouldn't do it if it were my own club, to be honest. But I think out of all those ones, that'd be the most confident, to be honest. Where I could see someone going who's expected to win, going to win there against Truro. Like I said, I just think they're pretty much down.
Well, what I would say, Luke, just very quickly, what I would say is I think if we do go and get 3 points against Truro, I would go as far as to say playoffs are pretty much wrapped up for Scunthorpe. With it being the game in hand as well, we obviously got one game in hand over Halifax. I think if that gap goes to 11 points, we obviously both got 8 games left. I would say that would give Halifax a mountain to climb in terms of overtaking Scunthorpe. So if we were to go there on Tuesday and win, I would say playoffs are pretty much not guaranteed, but pretty much locked in, I would say. I hope we do, but yeah, I see what you're saying. I think from the outside, everyone will expect Scunthorpe to go there and win. Just after the Putnam result and a couple of the other results as well, I'm just a little bit not pessimistic. I'm just a little bit concerned. I don't think it will be. There's a lot of people. I've seen a lot of kind of 2 and 3-0 prediction. I think it will be a lot tougher than that. I think it'll be a real tough battle down there. I know they're already pretty much relegated, of course. But Truro never give in. They're never going to give you an easy 3 points. They're always going to have a go. They're fairly well drilled, and I'm sure they'll be quite difficult to break down. I think if we can go there and score an early goal, I think it could be a different story. But I think the longer the game goes on, it could turn into a little bit of a sticky evening. But hopefully not, of course. But I do agree with what you're saying in terms of if you're looking through them sort of 5 or 6 fixtures from the division, you would naturally probably pick Scunthorpe away at Truro. So I do see where you're coming from completely, Luke, with that. I'm just saying I'm just a little bit wary this week, to be honest, to go out and say that we're going to do the job.
Yeah, you don't want to have egg on your face, I suppose, particularly when you're a Scunthorpe fan yourself. But of course, also the underdog one, I suppose. The outsider is of course Southend to get a point at Rochdale. I've got a good feeling that Southend will get a point. I say it's a good feeling; it won't be when it actually happens, because Halifax, it wouldn't help us out, to be fair, if Southend managed to pick a result up against Rochdale, or potentially even if they won. But yeah, I'm going to go for a 1-1 draw for that one. And that more or less wraps up the podcast. Ryan, as always, thanks for joining me. It's been good to have you on and to reflect on Game Week 38 and look towards Tuesday's fixtures.
Yeah, it's been a really good one, Luke. I've really enjoyed it. Yeah, I think we'll learn a lot in midweek again. It's obviously a game in hand for most of the teams that are playing. It's not a scheduled game week, is it? So it's games in hand for teams. So it's really important, even more important if anything. So yeah, it'll be interesting to see how it all pans out, and we'll see where we are at this time on Tuesday night, I guess. But thanks for having me on as always. Really appreciate it.
Please remember to everyone that's watching to like and subscribe. We're trying to get to 3,000 subscribers by the end of the season, so it does go a long way if you can help us out by that. Also, drop your comments below. Let us know your thoughts on some of the predictions and our reflections on a lot of the games in the previous game week and looking towards Tuesday's games too. And as always, thanks for tuning in, and we will see you next time. Bye for now.